Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. Lee Camp. Hope you're all doing well out there. The massive destruction continues across Palestine. I mean, here's some footage of just how extreme the response has been from Israel. I feel my job is to bring you the stuff you're not getting enough of on your mainstream media. I think you're probably getting plenty on the attack by Hamas. I think you're probably getting plenty of information on that. I think what you're probably not getting enough information on is just the unbelievable destruction that is currently being wrought across Gaza. This is just footage of one area, and now obviously this is mass destruction of a group of people, killing, murder of a group of people. They have no way out. I mean, I know Netanyahu was like, leave now, and then they closed all the passages. So there's not actually any way out for them. And the, Israeli jets are dropping bombs that are meant to kill hundreds, thousands, including innocent civilians. Now, it seems likely that the Hamas attack also killed innocent civilians. I don't celebrate or act like either of these is good. Either of these is worth celebrating. Either of these is something that we should all get behind and really endorse. They're both disgusting. And I'm going to bring to you a Chris Hedges article that talks about, it's titled, in a few minutes I'll bring that to you. It's titled, Palestinians Speak the Language of Violence Israel Taught Them. And I think that the most important thing in this, one of the most important things, is to talk about how this did not begin a few days ago. This is a long-term apartheid state, long-term oppression and murder and killing. Of course, one of the ones that really sticks in my mind was during the Great March of Return, when IDF snipers were just picking off children and press and medics. And that all has to be wrapped up in this. It cannot be, you cannot just speak of one. You cannot just speak of, oh, well, it's very upsetting that Hamas killed innocent civilians. Absolutely it is. And let's talk about the entire story then. I saw someone in the comment thread before the show had even started posted that I've supported a two-state solution, etc., but this barbarism is too much for me, and I don't care what's done to Palestinians now. Well, really, if this barbarism was too much for you, then what about the barbarism of the Israeli snipers, of the Israeli bombs? What about all the thousands of innocent civilians murdered in Palestine across the past 20 years? Was that not enough for you? That was fine? That was okay? I was down for, both sides are fine as long as you're just killing Palestinians. No. What has changed? It's horrific. And I don't know. You need to see the entire story. You need to go back and look at this apartheid state over many, many years. And it doesn't mean that if you're a leftist, if you're anti-war, if you're anti-death and murder, it doesn't mean you have to sit here and high five for innocent civilians getting killed anywhere. I was just talking to some friends who are also Jewish like me. And, I was saying it's like if, celebrating what Hamas did. There's portions of it you can celebrate. You can celebrate, or I don't know about celebrate, but there's portions of it that you can look at differently in terms of fighting against the IDF, in terms of breaking out of that border, which is not actually a border. I'll get to that in a few minutes. But to celebrate just the killing of innocent people that, yeah, they might have endorsed the Israeli state, but they're not fighters. They're not, as far as I've seen. And again, truth is the first thing to die a horrible death at the beginning of a war. But, there are innocent people who were killed, as far as I can tell so far. And you know, if all the evidence comes out tomorrow that no, there were no innocent people murdered, then okay, fine, I'll reassess. But I don't think that's what we're going to find out. I don't think that's what we're going to find out tomorrow. But anyway, I was talking to some friends, and you know, we were saying it's like if people broke out of the concentration camps in Nazi Germany, and then killed a bunch of Nazi soldiers. I'd be all for that. Okay, well done. And if they then started walking down the streets, just also murdering just random people, you know, random men, women, and children had nothing to do with it. Of course, back in Nazi Germany, I assume that any man of military age was in the military, probably. But no, I wouldn't be like, yeah, good thing you got that kid. Good thing you killed that child. Good thing that 5-year-old was taken out. And I think that's what's lost in war. That's always lost in war. Hedges, who has been a war correspondent, does a great job of talking about that. Of course, you need to side in general with the oppressed peoples, but that doesn't mean you need to endorse the killing of every random kid who happens to be nearby. So, you know, I think there is a little bit too much of that that I've seen, and way too much, of course, on the other side in terms of people. Yeah, get Gaza, show them who's boss, obliterate Gaza. Yeah, kill those women and children, and fucking, it's disgusting, and it shows how morally bankrupt so many people are out there in this world. But there are so many people right now, and I think especially in the Jewish community, you know, having vigils at JCCs and synagogues and stuff around the nation and around the world. And okay, but are you also having vigils for the innocent people killed in Palestine? Did you have a vigil for the innocent people killed during the March of Return? Did you have a vigil for all the people, the journalists, the IDF have murdered? Did you have vigil? It doesn't feel like you probably did. I don't think you did, which makes it, you know, a really horrific kind of moral relativism that, you know, I don't want to be a part of. Okay, speaking of that, though, I want to bring you this, where the BBC got completely schooled by the Palestinian ambassador to the UK. And I want to chat with you about this. And by the way, on some of the titles for some of the platforms, I put that Chase Iron Eyes was going to be joining us. He has had to cancel due to a family emergency, but I will have him on soon, possibly Friday. So don't worry, I will bring you, if you're looking for Chase Iron Eyes, the great activist and lawyer. I will be bringing that interview to you in the coming days, hopefully. So, okay, here's the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, who was brought on BBC and was immediately asked, as they always are, are you going to condemn, you know, everything that Palestinians have ever done? Anyway, you'll see.
You just condemned Israel for killing civilians, and you won't condemn Hamas for killing civilians.
How many times you have interviewed Israeli officials, Louise? Hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. How many times Israel have committed war crimes right live on your own cameras? Do you start by asking them to condemn themselves? Have you? You don't. You don't. No, I'll answer that question. You don't. You know.
I'm going to play the rest in just a second, but he's absolutely right. It's a complete hypocrisy when it comes to these interviews. Yes, they will sometimes have Palestinian representatives on to give you know, their side of the issues, and sometimes they even give them fair airtime. Sometimes they even sit there and let them speak and let them give their view. That does happen occasionally on BBC or CNN. I mentioned one the other day, but the questions are completely different, and the way it's talked about are completely different. Israeli officials or U.S. officials who are, you know, essentially Israeli officials because, the U.S. does propaganda for Israel. The U.S. government does, and the U.S. mainstream media does. So U.S. and Israeli officials, when they're brought on to talk about Israel, they're never asked immediately, do you condemn first question one out of the gate, do you condemn the IDF for shooting children and medics and press and elderly, unarmed people, just murdering, just blanket bombing areas of Gaza? Do you condemn that? They never ask them that question. I don't know if I've ever seen them ask that question of these Israeli officials, U.S. government officials on our mainstream media, BBC, etc. So of course he's right. Never. Anyway, let's see the rest of what he said.
No, I refuse to answer this question because I refuse the premise of it. Because at the very heart of it is misrepresentation of the whole thing. Because it's the Palestinians that are always expected to condemn themselves. I mean, come on, this is a political conflict. We have been denied our rights for a long time. So this is the wrong starting point. The right starting point is to focus on the root causes, is to try and get out of this extreme dark tunnel, as opposed to this business by BBC and the mainstream media for 75 years. You bring us here whenever there are Israelis who are killed. Did you bring me here when many Palestinians in the West Bank, more than 200 over the last few months? Do you invite me when there is such Israeli provocations in Jerusalem and elsewhere? Because what Israelis have seen, which we...
And yet again, he's right. They'll have representatives like this on to talk about these issues after Israelis have been killed. They almost never have them on after Palestinians have been killed, which is far more regular, right? I showed you the numbers yesterday. Far more regularly, innocent Palestinians are murdered by the IDF, by Israel, and they're not having Palestinian officials on to give their take on things when that happens. No, they have them on after Israelis are murdered in this horrific apartheid-based war.
Do you invite me when there is such Israeli provocations in Jerusalem and elsewhere? Because what Israelis have seen, which we started by saying tragic, the last 48 hours, the Palestinians see every day for the last 50 years. You know the situation in Gaza, you've just described it. This is the biggest open-air prison.
All right, so that's the end of that clip. But he nailed it exactly. They carefully couch these things on the mainstream media. They carefully describe these things in such a way that it is meant to do propaganda for Israel, allowing for Israel's crimes while not allowing for response from Gaza, from Palestinians. And I've done whole segments on the way the mainstream media covers these stories, long segments on Redacted Tonight many times, about how they'll, and luckily I've heard more coverage of this since I did my piece. I'm not saying everyone saw my piece, but I feel like I was a little ahead of the curve on it. How whenever the mainstream media covers Palestinian deaths, it's always with the passive voice. It's always Palestinians were killed. No, they don't even use. They don't even usually use killed. They usually say, deaths were recorded in Palestine, or sometimes they'll say Palestinians were killed. Sometimes they'll even say Palestinians got hit by bullets, is one of my favorites. But when Israelis are killed, it is Hamas murdered Israelis, Hamas killed Israelis. They very carefully tell you who the perpetrator is. Whereas when Israel is murdering people, they leave it all passive. They go, oh, well, the Palestinians were killed. And that's the best you'll get. That's when they're covering Palestinian deaths, which most of the time they're not. Most of the time, it's very rare. In the Great March of Return, they started covering it because basically it was pushed to the point that the mainstream media could not ignore the story any longer. It was on every other outlet, and the mainstream media ultimately had to cover the Great March of Return to some extent. But like I said, I didn't get any of those articles to highlight on this live stream right now, but I have done that in the past. Whole segments showing that the New York Times, Washington Post, all of them will act like it's the passive voice, like it's a mystery person who has murdered Palestinians. Like bullets just rained down from somewhere. We don't know. It was a bullet storm from a cloud, and it just hit some folks. But I have seen more people talking about that, talking about the difference in voice, the grammatical trickery used to basically do propaganda for the apartheid state of Israel. Okay, I wanted to, again, I have a bunch of things to bring you, so I'm trying to decide which to bring you first. There were a lot of protests, not as heavily covered in your mainstream media, maybe barely at all. There were many protests around the world standing for the Palestinian struggle. Here's images from New York City, the People's Dispatch, the world stands with Palestinian struggle. People across the globe have organized rallies in support of Palestine as Israeli forces besiege the Gaza Strip following Hamas's massive armed operation into Israel. And I'm going to bring you more information in a moment, suggesting that Israel did quite possibly know this was going to happen, and either by looking the other way or by actively supporting it. And if you missed my live stream yesterday, your question may be, as I answered yesterday, why the hell would Israel do that? Why would they want something like this to happen? Why would they want Hamas to have a big strike like this? Well, it allows them to do everything they wanted to do anyway. I mean, they've wanted to just indiscriminately drop bombs across Gaza for years now. And Israel was dealing with they were really losing the propaganda war. They were losing the information war. People were finding out the truth about what's going on there, about the apartheid situation. That's a light term. The apartheid oppression, the apartheid abuse, and a lot of people were learning the truth. And so Israel they're facing that. They've been facing boycott, divest, and sanction, where their corporations and their income is getting cut off. There's a lot of things were turning against the apartheid state in Israel. And by the way, if you want peace, if you want to see sustainability, if you want to see freedom, then it begins and ends with stopping an apartheid state. You cannot expect to have freedom and stability for all in an apartheid situation. It just doesn't exist. So that is the way this has to work. That is the way this has to end. But yeah, so Israel's getting a lot of what they want out of this. And because they are now governed, Israel is now governed by just the farthest right-wing maniacs you can imagine, who have been looking to create a genocide. So that's why they would, it is quite possible they allowed this to happen. Let's see. I'll bring you this first. So this is, and please, by the way, please everyone, click subscribe, click share, click thumbs up. This show is completely and utterly supported by you. There are no giant sponsors keeping this thing afloat. So if you want to see information like this, then please do share it and become a member at leecamp.net. But anyway, this is coming from the Cradle outlet, and they're saying that rebellious Israeli officers provided Hamas with crucial intel. This report is saying. Now, it's an Iranian news outlet, so you can take that for you can say, oh well, Iran is trying to sow propaganda, as you could do with any nation. You could say, oh, this is their slant on things. But I'm trying to bring this article to you in the sense of it's quite possible that Israel wanted to see something like this. I mean, of course, the ruling elite of Israel, not the fucking people. That's the thing. In all of these nations that are all at war right now, if the people got together, we'd be fucking best friends. We would love each other. No, I mean, there are some awful racists out there, but they're a small percentage. If you actually were to live together and learn about people and sit down with them and actually learn about their culture and your culture and exchange ideas, then you would work together and you would love each other and we would have an amazing, amazing human race. A human race to the finish. Boy, we are on a race to the finish, aren't we? That's why they call it the human race, because the finish line is coming soon. Anyway, so this is the rule. I'm saying the ruling elite wanted to see something like this. Hopefully, a small percentage of Israelis would ever be that fucking horrific to want to see something like this in order to want to see an attack by Hamas in order to justify essentially genocide bombing. Anyway, Iranian news outlet Tasnim is said in a report October 9th, citing an informed Palestinian source, that elements of the Israeli army who had been collaborating with Hamas provided the resistance group with crucial information, aiding in their operations. Some of the information used during the infiltration phases had been acquired through longtime collaboration of certain Israeli military personnel with the resistance groups. This information played a crucial role in facilitating the infiltration of forces into Israeli districts, especially the military bases surrounding Gaza. According to the official, the cooperation goes beyond mere intelligence matters. The official states that this collaboration relates specifically to the increase over the years of weapons theft from Israeli bases. In 2012, even Haaretz, which is a Israeli newspaper, a very respected Israeli newspaper, but they are opposed to the apartheid state, Haaretz. They believe that Palestinians should have freedom. Haaretz reported that $14 million worth of equipment had been stolen from Israeli military basements. In 2019, Ma'ariv newspaper reported the disappearance of nearly 50 M16 rifles, many of which were never recovered. So you can see a lot of robberies of theft of this Israeli weaponry. Now, again, there's two ways to view this. This article is saying, they're just saying the fact that, or at least let's hope it's a fact. I mean, in terms of let's hope this is accurate information. They're just saying that Israeli soldiers helped in this behind the scenes, certain Israeli soldiers. Now, they're calling them rebellious Israeli soldiers. But there's another way to view this. Again, this could have been facilitated and allowed by Israel. I don't know. I'm not saying with certainty. Anyone who is telling you they have certainty on that matter, they're lying to you. But there's a lot of information here that I don't know. It seems, I'm a little skeptical of the idea that in one of the most surveilled places on earth, that is an open air prison, that not that you could break through the fence. I'm sure there's ways to break through the fence. That's not shocking to me. But that this large scale plan, and it then took them days to secure the quote unquote border, which is not really a border. I'll get into that in a second. But it took them 2 days for Israel to secure the border. It took hours for them to even get active in trying to deal with the whatever you want to call it, attack. It's just a really slow reaction. Seems odd that this level of attack could be planned in one of the most surveilled places on earth. But okay, let's get on to some details about Gaza and the Israeli border with Gaza that you're not getting in your mainstream media. There's an excellent piece by AJ Plus, which is Al Jazeera's kind of like web thing. By the way, initially when I was starting Redacted Tonight, the news director wanted to title the show. Oh, sorry, not Redacted Tonight, but the second version of Redacted Tonight VIP, which was all interviews. The news director wanted to title that show Redacted Tonight Plus, and I think it was because of AJ Plus. He thought that was a good idea. To me, it sounded like some sort of cleaning fluid. Like I feel like it's always like OxyClean Plus or something, and so I didn't want the plus. But here's AJ Plus. I mean, doesn't AJ Plus sound like it could probably get the shit that's, stuck to your car off. Like, throw some AJ Plus on, that'll come right off. Anyway, that being said, here is, for those of you listening to the podcast, which is called The Lee Camp Show on Spotify, I'm going to read some of this because it's, I don't want to play the audio because I think that'll get me a copyright strike or something, but I'm going to read some of this as it goes. But so talking about the fence between Gaza and Israel around the world's largest open-air prison. Since March 2018, thousands of Palestinian refugees trapped inside Gaza have taken part in the March of Return, demanding the right to return to their homes in what is now Israel. So that's something you need to know, is it began as a refugee camp. It's now a prison. But people were forced to go there out of their own homes when Israel was, quote unquote, founded, which was 1948. But so you have millions of people kicked out of their homes and sent to this refugee camp that is really a prison. Israel built a 25-mile fence and has shot people protesting near it, saying it's defending its border. But this fence isn't a border. You know how we know that? Because Israel said so back in the 1990s in the Oslo Agreement. This is such an important point. Israel itself acknowledged that this is not supposed to be a border because they won't allow Gaza to be a nation. So you can't have a border between something that's not a nation. In the Oslo Agreement, they said the security fence erected by Israel around the Gaza Strip and the line demarcated by the fence shall be authoritative only for the purpose of the agreement. They called it a security fence. All parties signed it. They did not call it a border. And then... yeah. So again, that's because it's not, they won't let it be a nation. So if it can't be a nation, then it can't be a border. They want to separate it. They want to pretend as if this video goes on to say Israel wants to pretend as if this is a separate nation that is trying to invade their country. But no, these Palestinians were there and actually are technically part of Israel, if we're pretending Israel is a country. So it's, you can't have a border within your own country. In fact, international law says Gaza is still under Israeli occupation. The idea that there's an actual Palestinian sovereignty in the Gaza Strip or even the West Bank is false. Israel continues to control all aspects of life in the Gaza Strip, and as such is deemed under international law to still be occupying that land. So it's 306, the Gaza Strip is 365 square kilometers. There's only 5 crossing points of the Israeli fence, and 3 of those have been closed for years. So really there's only 2 crossing points. And only 1 of them is for people. So there's 1 crossing point. In September 2018, Israel allowed less than 6,000 people to exit through the areas crossing the entire year. 6,000 people. And that includes for medical needs, everything. Israel even limits what can go in and out of Gaza. Sage, cardamom, ginger, dried fruit, potato chips have all been on the prohibited list. And of course, that includes plenty of foods. It includes medication. It includes everything people need to live. When these buildings are blown up by Israel, and they've been blown up for years, right? Israel drops bombs seemingly all the time. They can't rebuild because they can't get building materials. The video says it controls things to the degree with, sorry, I lost it. But so if someone is born in the Gaza Strip and they are not registered within the Israeli authorities, they do not exist. They are unable to travel outside of the Gaza Strip. More than 2/3 of the people living in Gaza are registered refugees whose families were forced out of their homes by Zionist militias in 1948 in what became Israel. And many were killed. Thousands and thousands of people were killed. It was a genocide by expelling 4 out of 5 Palestinians who had lived there. So this fence stands between Palestinians and their former homes from which they were evicted, and they've been forbidden to return. All important points. And so again, I don't support any murder of innocent civilians, but you need the full story. You can't just tell one part, have a vigil for one half of this and ignore the reality, ignore the death and destruction on one side. That's not a moral way to live, to believe. All right, now let's get into how excited weapons contractors are. I'm going to bring you information about that, and I'm also going to bring you the Chris Hedges article. That is coming up, but all the rest of this is going to be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's already going there. If you're watching there, nothing changes. And it will also keep going at my locals page, which is the only way I support this show. So if you can support me at leecamp.net, it's 38 cents an episode, $6 a month. You get all of the live streams for free whenever you want them, whereas they disappear on other platforms. You get my new ebook, Dangerous Ideas. You get other exclusive content. You get to interact with the community. You get to post whatever you want. All of that's at leecamp.net, my locals page. And I'm going to I should be able to do a bonus segment for everybody at locals today, just for you guys. So stick around after this is over. And another thing I want to tell you is, before I get to the new information on weapons contractors and how excited they are to see this horrific war, I have this coming Saturday is my second live Zoom comedy show. It's stand-up comedy, even though I'm seated. Because stand-up comedy obviously is like a style. It's where you perform comedy and there's a crowd, and so I call it stand-up comedy even though I'm seated, which is I think it's pretty accurate. But it's a full hour of my performance. Then I will also have 2 opening guests. I can announce both of them now. Rock musician James Kennedy, who is much beloved in the UK. You're probably more familiar with him in the UK. And also, he's amazing if you haven't checked him out. And also comedian Jafar Khan, who was a Redacted Tonight correspondent for the most of the last 2 years of Redacted Tonight. And if you've missed him, you'll get to see some of his new stand-up comedy. He'll be opening as well. And the whole thing is live. These are not videos. We're all sitting there with you. You can be a part of that via Zoom by grabbing a $5 ticket at leecamp.simpletix.com. It's on the screen right now. leecamp.simpletix.com. Go there, grab your ticket. It's 14th and 18th. And this is completely different from the hour I did in September. And because I've been working on the hour, working on writing it, getting it ready, working on my notes, all that stuff, it is not about Israel and Palestine. So I think that's a relief to everyone. I think we maybe need a little break. So that's Saturday. And then there's also one, I'll be performing it a second time Wednesday, the following Wednesday, 14th and 18th. So grab your $5 tickets over at leecamp.simpletix.com. They could sell out. The last one sold out. So, all right. I will see everyone at rumble.com/LeeCamp and my locals page starting right about now. And I'm going to bring you Chris Hedges' new article as well. All right. One more second.